Our framework question is, why do we trust scientific theories and how do we prove them?
Believed that they were the center of the universe. They believed that the sun revolved around them. Later, the geocentric model was disproved by the Copernicus heliocentric model. The heliocentric model was a theory that stated that the sun was the center of the universe. But due to the geocentric theory, the heliocentric theory was a dangerous assertion at the time and could not win over the supporters of the geocentric model, which is a model that persisted over thousands of years. However, the geocentric model did not explain the retrograde motions of the planets even with ellipticals. This is what led Copernicus to propose the heliocentric model. If you put the sun at the center and have the other planets rotate around it, the apparent retrograde motion is explained by the Earth overtaking the more distant planets as it travels around the sun. Later, Galileo created the telescope, which allowed people to see that the sun was the center of the universe.
So the luminiferous ether, people believe this theory mostly because it was invented by the ancient Greeks, which was thought to be like the pure form of air that the gods breathed. But then it became like the fifth element and evolved into like the god of the sun. It inspired alchemy, and it was talked about in Plato's theory about the cosmos, which relates to the areas of knowledge of religion and natural sciences. And then the medieval alchemists believed that it was like the philosopher's stone, which might be like related to the area of knowledge of pseudoscience, depending on who you. And then the first modern scientists believed that the ether was the natural phenomenon, such as gravity and light. So it was seen as a frame of reference that everything else in the universe was stationary, just from our point of view and the technology at the time. So it appeared that the sun orbits the Earth, as said in the geocentric theory. So the area of knowledge is natural science. And then people no longer believe this theory because of the Michelson-Morley experiment, which was conducted by Albert Michelson and Edward Morley in 1887. It was planned. It hoped to prove the existence of the ether, but it actually disproved it. They planned to divide a beam of light and then reflect them off two separate mirrors, which had the same distance and like the spots. Um, they they planned to record different velocities because like when the light was going in the same direction of the ether, it was supposed to speed it up as opposed to when the light was going in the opposite direction, it was supposed to slow down. So that's different velocity. The universal speed of light, which helped Einstein create his different theories, which also proved to go with modern physics. So light is now said to travel through a vacuum, and the and we kind of discovered that because the ether, well, the ether didn't align with the different theories, such as like light was at the time being debated about a light particle or a wave. So that's kind of where we got to that. And then what's obsolete about this theory and what is refined about it. Today, the ether is being used to describe the discoveries of dark energy, because like we don't really have the technology to explain that right now. And we know that the universe is continually expanding, so that's just the term that we use. It's being considered as the fifth conventional force among gravitational force, electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear forces, which are used in modern physics. So again, it kind of comes full circle. Yeah.
Phlogiston theory is an archaic scientific theory which stated that phlogiston, a fire-like element, is contained within combustible materials. This theory was originally started by Johann Joachim Becher in 1667. Originally, people had faith in this theory because before the discovery of oxygen, there was no obvious explanation for why certain things combusted and why combustions always left marks such as ashes. Now, today we know that oxygen is a necessary source of fuel to fuel any combustion reaction. However, back then, it was unknown. So the phlogiston theory basically explains that anything combustible, so let's say wood, it contains that material, wood, plus phlogiston, which is more of an essence, not really a material. So you couldn't see it, but you could, I guess, feel it, is how it was described. So when you burn wood and you're left with the ashes, those ashes are actually just wood without the phlogiston remaining, because ashes are obviously not combustible. After the discovery of oxygen, which is always present during combustions, like I said, this theory was largely discredited, which kind of ties into the natural sciences area of knowledge. A key part of the natural sciences is as new information comes to light, as new evidence comes to light, old theories are discredited and we begin to believe in new ones. Obviously, whenever a new theory comes into play, there must be vast amounts of evidence to support that new claim. So this also kind of brings to light the question of whether phlogiston was considered a pseudoscience theory or not, because there wasn't really much clear empirical evidence that supported that phlogiston existed in the first place. So many nowadays largely attribute the concept of phlogiston to pseudoscience. Now on to Miles.
Anomalous water, or polywater, was a hypothesized dense form of water that would not freeze or evaporate, leading to several popular theories, including that normal water could be contaminated. The Soviet Union claimed to have developed polywater in a lab, though it was actually scientific error. In reality, despite great efforts from scientists to maintain purity, the water had been contaminated, reacting with other substances to form a water-like substance with a different boiling and freezing point than typical H2O. The results are traditionally considered to be an example of pathological science, where people's biases lead them to reach scientific conclusions merely because they want them to be true, rather than because of actual scientific foundation. After its false discovery, however, the media immediately used it to create fear over yet another scientific gap between the United States and the Soviet Union. So polywater was a discovery in the field of natural science, and the theory behind polywater has largely become obsolete. Many scientists have noted that, given the stability of polywater, it would be the more natural form of water, and the vast majority of liquid water would convert itself to that form, or humans would convert water to polywater to benefit from the excess energy. Bell Labs found polywater to be mostly chlorine and sodium, and further analysis determined that particles of small solids like phospholipids and silica had entered supposed polywater. When experiments were reproduced under more controlled conditions, polywater could no longer be produced, indicating its falsehood. Thus, the theory behind polywater has largely been discredited, and few people continue to believe in it. The idea that polywater is a separate substance made purely of H2O has been made wholly obsolete, given the experimentation that has proven that polywater can only exist when it contains contaminants that are ultimately responsible for the substance's differing properties. This experimentation has led to the more accessible explanation that, though the entire theory was pathologically based rather than scientifically grounded, certain particles added to water can modify its boiling and freezing points. This concept was already known, but the theory furthers specific experimentation with the effects of phospholipids, silica, and biological impurities